Good evening and welcome to my Wednesday, the spin-off Sheffield Wednesday podcast from the Wednesday week, where we get to talk to fans of the football club, fans of Sheffield Wednesday, and get to see and hear some of their insight into what has made them fans of the club. My name is Stevie. You'll have heard me from the regular podcast, and with me tonight I have a very special guest. Obviously, we've talked about it off air. It's a little bit of an awkward one. The reason that this is a very special guest for me is that I'm actually going to introduce you to my sister, and I'm going to do my Wednesday with my sister Steph. Hi Steph, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Not bad at all. Still buzzing from a few weeks ago, so yeah, good.
Good. Yeah, before we go any further, I thought it'd be important. We're gonna timestamp tonight. We're recording this evening on Monday, the 12th of June. We do have a backlog, and we've fallen foul of one or two of these going out a little bit out of sync. So people in some of the earlier ones have been celebrating getting promotion and winning the league at Cantor. Some of us have talked about the falling off a cliff on some of the earlier ones. So we do make a habit of time stamping them. Thankfully, we are in the close season now, and we're a couple of weeks away from having the miracle of Hillsborough, if you like, winning 5-1 at Peterborough and then subsequently going on and winning down at Wembley. And no doubt we'll speak about that before we get to the end of the show. But we're going to try and get through this without us talking about us and our memories. And I'm going to treat my sister as one of the just a random guest and a listener to the podcast. So I'm going to hand straight over to you, Steph. Talk to us about why Sheffield Wednesday, where it all began, and why you are a Sheffield Wednesday fan.
Okay, yeah, right. So, in actual fact, as you know, we shouldn't really be Wednesday fans. Sort of growing up where we grew up, and I actually sort of Googled this, the distance from Bramhall Lane, and it's 0.4 miles. So, as you know, you're literally out of our front door on Shara Lane, straight down, just keep going, and you arrive at Bramhall Lane. So bang to rights, we should be United fans. And there weren't many Wednesday fans growing up around Shara, sort of back in the sort of mid-80s. But obviously, a close family friend, sort of father figure, Malk, was a crazy, mad Wednesday fan. So you spend a lot of time with him, sort of kicking the ball around in the backyard, going down to Millhouses Park, he'd take us sometimes, or Adventure Playground just down the road. And yeah, I think it got to the point where he'd go out in the corner, be listening to praise or grumble on a Saturday afternoon, or the live commentary. And it was just that really, that sort of hook. It got to the point where on a Saturday afternoon, he'd be listening to the radio, the sort of commentary would be flicking between the local sort of games on Radio Sheffield, and he'd be throwing a ball at me, and I'd be sort of pretending to be the goalkeeper, and underneath the dining room table, and that's getting shouted at by mum occasionally for playing football in the house as we did. But yeah, and it got to the point where he just sort of said, or I think after I'd pestered, he took me to Hillsborough one day, and at that point it was just me and Malk, because obviously you were a mad crazy Liverpool fan at that point. Well, you were, weren't you? Let's be honest, you were.
Yeah. I've told this story before. Yeah,
so it was arguments, fist fights, who was a better team, and that went on for I don't even know in terms of time scale back then. When you're sort of 7 or 8, I've kind of lost the thread of how long it was between me going for the first time and then you coming. Your first game was when Liverpool came to Hillsborough. So I don't really know that, but I can remember being sat on the south stand, quite different to what it is now. For the very first game, and it was 0-0 up to, it must have been the last five or 6 minutes or something. I remember obviously us scoring. I can't even remember who it was against. I've got this vague recollection in my mind that it might have been Luton or Leicester or somebody like that. And we scored quite late on. I remember Malk saying, "I thought you weren't going to see a goal for your first game," and obviously I did, and that was it. I was just absolutely hooked. And the Saturday afternoon thing was either, he'd take me to the game, or we'd be sort of listening to it on the radio. And it was never going to be United after that. It was always going to be Wednesday after that. Caused a lot of sort of problems amongst the friendship peer group, being one of only a handful of Wednesday fans growing up around Sharrow. But yeah, I stuck to my guns and resisted.
Yeah, I've got these random recollections like you have when we talk about being in the kitchen or the back room as it was, and I totally forgot about playing football in the back and using the table as a goal. But we used to have the kitchen door, and if you remember, there'd be days where he'd be in and get to Saturday lunchtime, and then he'd disappear for like 3-4 hours, and we were too young to understand where we were going and what were going on. And then he'd come back at sort of 5:30, 6 o'clock, and he'd hang his coat on the door, and he'd have a program rolled up in his coat pocket, and that was it. And me being me, because I'm a bit of a geek, you get the program out, and it'd be right, what's this? And he'd talk you through it, and he'd explain, right, this is where I've been this afternoon, sort of thing. But like you said, too young to have any sort of frame of reference or real understanding about what that meant and where he was going and what was going on. But I just got obsessed with the stats pages. So you'd look at every week it'd be another starting 11 plus your 2 subs, and they'd all go under the numbers. So you'd have the goalkeeper would obviously be under number 1. You'd look at the ages, and you'd look at how many games he'd played that season and career games and so forth. And I just got transfixed with that sort of thing. So my sort of first in, if you like, getting into it all and that sort of match day experience. And you're right, I fell in love with football because I listened to Liverpool in 1986 Cup final going to a swimming gala. And that was my first sort of exposure, because our parents weren't big football fans. Dad weren't a footballer, he was a boxer. And he wasn't bothered about taking us to football or anything like that. And so when Malcolm turned up and we had that sort of initial experience, it was absolutely mind-blowing. So yeah, it was the hook. And obviously you've gone direct and gone right, because I can remember you had, not wanting to take away from obviously your story, but that first sort of kit that you got, and I can remember you being on the school playground in that kit. Can you remember that?
Yeah, I think it was the Finlook TV video kit, that sort of big, thick blue and white. You see a lot of the sort of replica retro remakes of that sort of shirt nowadays, but yeah, that was my first Wednesday shirt. And then I remember the following one was the thinner pinstriped blue one. The following, because it wasn't every season in those days. Obviously nowadays you get a new kit every season. It was like every couple of seasons, or it alternated with home and away. So I remember wearing that shirt to absolute death, day in, day out, more or less. Yeah. And I think quite early on I'd kind of got a bit of an affinity to one or two different players. It was Lee Chapman, absolute hero, and Martin Hodge. And obviously back in those days, no social media, there's no real way of sort of connecting with the players as a fan. And I remember, I don't know how I did it, but I found out when Martin Hodge's birthday was. And I remember sending him a birthday card, and he sent me in return a signed little sort of postcard picture of him. And I just stuck it randomly on my bedroom wall, and it just stayed there for years. And that was it in those days, wasn't it? You had to literally put pen to paper and post it to sort of have any sort of association with the players back in those days. It just didn't happen, did it, really?
No, it didn't. You're absolutely right. And you've gone to a couple there, sort of Chapman and Hodge. Were there any others that sort of stuck out? Big players that those characters from those early days.
Yeah, early on, probably somebody like Mel Sterland, Brian Marwood, Siggy Onsen, that type of sort of era. Although Malcolm used to give Brian Marwood some right stick every time. Oh my goodness me, yeah. And then obviously sort of maybe moving forward a little bit sort of later on, you sort of Worthingtons, Kings, obviously David Hurst, absolute Wednesday legend, and then Daly and Atkinson, those types of players. But for me, if I look back over sort of time from when I first started watching to now, it's always been sort of Martin Hodge, Lee Chapman, and then a lot of people talk about the Italians, but I loved them. Don't get me wrong, I loved watching them. They were flair players, but for me, nobody will outdo Chris Waddle for me. Just an absolute legend. Used to love watching him. It just used to make everything look so simple, but so difficult in terms of getting the ball off him, things like that. Did the same thing over and over again, and defenders always fell for it. I could never really get my head around that. Just a quality player. Yeah.
So we're skipping forwards a little bit from that sort of era of, the Howard Wilkinson, Eustace sort of era, going through into Atkinson coming in, and then Trevor Francis sort of era that obviously we went down and bounced back up, sort of 91, won the cup. We were there. Have you got any sort of memories of that day, being there in 91? We were still quite young, weren't we? But
I remember we got I'm sure we got on a coach from somewhere in Chapeltown, Ecclesfield, a pub. I think that was 91, and got the coach down. I remember being like really, really excited. I remember being quite overwhelmed, really, at the size of the number of people there, the size, the crowd. I don't quite think I'd really, been prepared for how loud it was going to be, how busy it was going to be, but at the same time, just absolutely lapped it up. I remember feeling really, really, really nervous. And then obviously we got the goal. Sheridan got the goal, didn't he? And I just remember thinking, this is unbelievable. Where at that age, thinking we're going to be the best team in the world now, and just thinking we're going to move on from this and be the best. Little did I know what was to come. But we had on the back of that was a bit of a springboard for a good couple of years, wasn't it? And I think being the age that we are now and looking back, I was thinking about this earlier. I was thinking, I still sort of really associate Sheffield Wednesday with being, and it's daft really because we're not a Premiership team, and we've never really for a number of years we've not been a top tier team, have we? But in my head, we slid down and went back up, and then we went down eventually again, and things just went to pot. But in my head, I always thought we'll come back and then we'll be a well-established top tier team, and it's just never really happened, has it? But I've still got this, and I think a lot of Wednesdayites of our sort of age and era that lived through those times probably have the same mindset that we're not actually really a third tier team or even a second tier team. Or a club, should I say, because the difference, isn't there, between a club and a team? I mean, hopefully one day we will be. Hopefully in the near future, hopefully we're on our way back to being that. But it's been a painful couple of decades, hasn't it?
23 years. I think the thing for me, and I've thought about this as well, I think the thing that's done us is I can remember sitting at the front of the Kop the year we went down. I think it was Forest beat us 3-0 and Stuart Pearce scored a free kick and that sent us down. And then we've bounced straight back and we've won a cup on the way by beating Man United, which by rights is pretty much the biggest team in the country at the time. So it was almost like a buffer, if you like. The next time we went down, it was almost as if to say, well, we'll be down for a year or two, but we've done it before and it's unfortunate, but then we'll come back and then we'll re-establish ourselves, because we went up, we finished third, we finished seventh, got to 2 cup finals, and in my mind it was very much right, it's just a little bit of a blip, but that blip's now gone on for as long as it has. And we've never actually managed to get back in there, have we? And that's the worry that I've sort of carried with us. And obviously we know because we go to the games together what we think about being a Wednesday fan and our hopes for the team and the club. And we've pretty much gone through it at various stages and forms as a pair for a lot of that time. Things and circumstances in our family situations have dictated that now we're a little bit older. We get to spend more time with our kids going through, and again, not to steal your thunder, because we'll talk about that in a little while. But that blip has it's lasted a long time, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. And to be honest, I didn't expect it to. I'll be really honest. And you meet people and work colleagues and things like that might be sort of in the 20s, late 20s, and what have you. And you think, they're mad Wednesday season ticket holders, and you think, what, you've never seen us play in the top league. And they really haven't, and you just feel sorry for them, don't you? Really, in a way.
Well, we've had Ben on the podcast as one of the hosts for sort of 3-4 years, and he's 21, 22-ish. He was born the year we went down, and he's as big a Wednesdayite as you'll ever meet. Do you know what I mean? And we've had 2 years of talking about being on, him being on the pod and his glory days and his glory eras of players like, I don't know, Paul McLaren and Lee Peacock are his go-to guys, and we're sitting here now talking about Di Canio, Carboni, Waddle, Hurst, and seeing us get to Wembley, winning cup finals and getting into the Premier League. We're of a certain era and a certain sort of vintage where we've actually been spoiled, haven't we?
Yeah, we've seen different phases as well in terms of everything. The ground even. I mean, I remember, I don't know which game it might have been Peterborough game. We were walking just towards the South Stand. I remember saying, remember when the club shop was there? And it was like this little walkway, wasn't it? Just this little room, and you cast your mind back to where things were. And when we went, took Sebastian down to, obviously we took Molly down as well, didn't we, to have the photograph taken with the trophy last week. Yeah. And I stood in the shop just looking around while we were queuing to take a picture, and I said to Michelle, when this shop used to be on 2 floors, staircase in it, isn't it? It's totally random. Yeah, it's just over time you see a lot of change, don't you? But you sort of love and passion for the club just stays the same, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course it does. Okay, so we've gone through a little bit so far on your sort of fandom, and one of the reasons that I wanted to, and I've gone to the lads and Holly and Vic and sort of said I'd love to get my sister on the podcast and just do a little bit. You're actually in rare company in the sense that you've actually played for Sheffield Wednesday. It's no great secret to those that know us. You're the better footballer out of the pair of us. And we've played for similar clubs in terms of Handsworth and Sheffield FC. Both involved at that sort of level. But you've actually pulled on the blue and white, haven't you?
I have, yeah. And I mean, it's crazy, isn't it? Really, when you think about it, now I take it for granted, but when you think about it, I go back to when Malt used to take us down to Millhouses Park and down to the pitch at the Adventure Playground. I remember not thinking that there were any girls, and it wasn't a possibility to play in a girls' team. But I still used to say to him, I want to play for Sheffield Wednesday. And it was just this naive comment that I just used to make over and over again. I want to play for Sheffield Wednesday. And he just used to brush it off. And then one day he came home and just went, do you want to go and play for a team? And I was like, well, yeah. It's like, well, Stevie's team, Handsworth, have got a team starting on a Saturday in a girls' league. So anyway, I went along, loved it. Was the only girl in that team. Was one of only 2 girls in the whole league for that first season, and then the second season I was the only girl in that league. So I'd have been like 11, 12. Played for 2 seasons, then had to stop because the sort of FA rules in those days where you could play up until I think it was like 12 or 13 years old, and then you couldn't play anymore, not in a mixed league. So I had to stop. So I was probably not playing for, I don't know, it seemed like a long time, but I bet it wasn't much more than about a year. And then lo and behold, Malt discovered, I don't know if you read it in the Greening or the Sheffield Star, Sheffield Wednesday ladies, there's a ladies team. Anyway, I went along and there was already a fairly well-established first team with some real quality players, some of which kind of went on and had really good careers with England. We tended to lose, if I'm honest, the really, really top players to Doncaster Bells, who were not only local rivals, but were the team. You think of the Chelseas at the minute, the dominant force in women's football. Although there's a few creeping a bit closer, it's got much more competitive. In those days, it was Donny Bells, and Arsenal was sort of up and coming. So went along. I was kind of under 14s, played for the under 14s, and then gradually over time sort of worked my way into the reserves when I was like probably about 15. So I was playing under 14. I was playing under 14s on the Saturday, and then also started playing for the reserves on the Sunday. So I was playing both days. And then as I got too old for the 14s, there was the 16s that I played for a couple of years. So I was consistently playing for sort of 2 teams, Saturday and Sunday. And I remember me sort of, I think it would have been my debut for the reserve. They were in a cup final. I can't remember where it was. I just remember it being a drive away. Summer holidays that I was doing my exams. So I think I must have just gone on study leave. First weekend after going on study leave. And we were, I don't know if we were 1-1. Anyway, I got subbed on late on, put me up front. No idea why he put me up front. But ball got played through. I ran onto it, and obviously, I'm not the fastest player, so I thought I'm just going to catch me. I'm going to hit this. So I just hit it, and it went in. So I scored sort of the winning goal on my debut in a cup final. That was it. Then I hadn't really I never really looked back since then. Soon after, sort of established myself in the first team, centre back, and yeah, sort of didn't really look back from there. Became a consistent first team player for Wednesday, which we were sort of training at Middlewood Road. Facilities then weren't, anything like what they are now. We got some backing from the club. So it tended to be in those days more token gestures. So, for example, use of the training facilities. We got hand-me-down kits. We got initially in those early days we got tickets for games as well, which was massive bonus to me. So it was, I suppose I was living the dream really. Playing for my team, we were doing well at the time, learning a lot. Some of those girls were a lot older than me. So it was tough at times, but it was massively rewarding at the same time.
Brilliant. And obviously, as you said, we're taking that to the sort of the mid 90s there, aren't we? Really, in terms of the sort of time scale. Swinging it back to the men's sort of thing. What was it like being a Wednesday fan in that era? I know we've touched on it in terms of the glory days of the early 90s and so forth, and some of the players that we've talked about. When we got to that sort of era, did you see us as a sort of an established Premiership team or Premier League team?
Absolutely.
Do you think we took things for granted?
Absolutely. I didn't really know much different by that point. It was sort of season after you'd go to Hillsborough. I remember sitting on that, that corner bit where there's no seats anymore, but it's just blue, where like when there's big games, they'll put a band up there or whatever. I remember sitting in that corner bit, watching Wednesday play Man U, and I kid you not, there couldn't have been a spare seat in the ground, which is why I ended up there. I never thought we'd slide down the leagues like we did. We were one of the dominant forces. There was talk of David Hurst going to Man U. These top teams sniffing around our place. It was just the norm, wasn't it? It was just the norm. I remember going training once with the girls, and I don't know if you remember. I can't remember the year, but obviously Wednesday was sponsored by Puma King, and you go in the shop and everything was Puma King. But you remember the advert that they did, where they'd been filming it, and I remember there was just all this paraphernalia, all this Puma stuff just left littered around where they'd been filming the advert, the Puma King advert at the training ground. And you couldn't dream of that now, really, could you? It's we were one of those top teams, really.
We've gone from Puma King and Puma filming adverts at our ground and our training ground to being sponsored by a company that nobody knows about, with a flat cap on shirt and D taxis that nobody's ever heard of. Nobody's ever seen one.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. But I mean, at that point, it did really look like we were, one of the top teams, a team to be really sort of reckoned with, didn't it? I think. Yeah,
absolutely. So we've gone from those sort of halcyon glory days of the 90s. We've suffered the relegation, sort of 2000-ish. Following that sort of period, we've gone into a sort of an extended run that we're still struggling to get out of. Tough one, this one. At what point did you think this is the lowest? What's the lowest point that we've ever had, do you reckon, in this sort of era?
I'll tell you when I felt really low when we got relegated, actually, a couple of years ago. I don't know if I'd say it's the lowest era, but it's something that sticks to mind where, it was COVID, wasn't it? There wasn't the crowd. I mean, we saw firsthand the effect of the crowd on, what it can do to a team. You talk about being 4-0 down, and the crowd, that night the crowd understood the assignment, didn't they? There was no two ways about it. You put that game in a COVID era, it doesn't end up 5-1, does it? It's really that simple. So that may have affected it. I probably didn't recognise that at the time, but it was a split second where there was those sort of two things going on at the same time, where we gave away a penalty and a goal went in a different game, and that was it. That was us. That was us done, wasn't it? That was us relegated. And I just thought, no, we're a few years away from being a gnat's whisker away from going the other way. 2016 weren't that long ago, were it? You think about it, the grand scheme of things. And we got to the playoffs the following year. We'd got beaten on penalties by Huddersfield. And I was just thinking then, was disappointed at the time, the 2016 final, but I thought we would bounce back. I thought we were going to be a team which will strengthen it and will come good. And we went the other way. And I just at the time thought, well, how long are we going to be back down in this league now? It's going to be years, if ever, till we start pushing to go the other way. And then we went and got season tickets. So.
These two things I'm going to pull out. First of all, I want to go back to that because that sort of the disappointment of going down and the circumstances around not being able to sort of capitalise on the getting to the final in 2016, and we fell short the year after, didn't we? All of this has come under Chancery's watch, and I'm curious to know what you make of the Chancery era. As I said, it's Monday the 12th of June tonight. We've had sort of private conversations about our disappointment and frustration, if you like, in terms of the cost of a season ticket nowadays. And privately, as we've been speaking this evening, they've just announced that the shirts are going to be released this week, and they're charging 65 quid for a Wednesday shirt, which isn't necessarily in keeping with the cost of living climate that we have at the moment necessarily. And we could do an entire podcast on whether or not we think his pricing strategy and his marketing strategy is right or wrong. I just, as a fan of the club, how do you feel about Chancery? A, in terms of what he's done, in terms of the die that he's, or the dice that he's rolled, and B, what we're as fans sort of coming out of it the other way, what we've had to endure as a result of that.
Difficult one, that, isn't it? Because I feel like I don't know enough about his marketing strategy and all the rest of it. What I would want from him is a bit more transparency. And every now and again, you do get, him coming out and making statements. I'd want to know the justification for putting the season tickets up by a couple of £100. Because I think, you look 2 weeks ago today, there were 44,000 Wednesday fans bending over backwards to make their way down to London to support their team. Some of those, I know there's been a lot said about this on Twitter, but some of those fans will not be in too many games this season. That's fair enough. I'm not one of these people that starts berating people if they can't go week in, week out. I completely get that. But is there a trick being missed by putting the prices so high? Is the average fan that had been teaching on the edge of, I might get a season ticket after going to see that, the euphoria? I think they might have missed a trick there. But then on the other hand, the other side, we are sort of sitting on the fence too much. The flip side of that coin is, if he knows something that we don't, and he's done the math, and this needs to happen for us, then yeah, I get that. But share that with us, share it completely, or share as much as you can.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same page as you with it. I understand why he's done what he's done. I get it. I don't agree with it. And the reason that I don't agree with it is your first point. There must have been some sort of, they must have looked at a projection where we've got 44,000 people that are going to pay a certain amount of money. We're never going to get 44,000 people through the door, by the way, because we can't get that many in anyway. And as you said, we're not in a situation where we're going to get that many people turning up day in, day out to come and watch us playing on a Tuesday night when we've got, I don't know, Plymouth, Ipswich, Stoke coming in, midweek, or we're playing somebody who's struggling down the bottom of the league. It's just not it's not an inviting sort of prospect, is it? So that's a cold hard facts around it. But if we could get to a point where we could get 30,000 people through the door at a certain price, then what's he thinking? Is the flip side of that they've looked at projections and gone, we're going to have to stick at this price because we're not going to get 30,000 people through the door. And that's not saying that fans are fair weather or anything like that, but he's looking at the reality. And from a business model, we've got to get 24, 25. That's the price we've got to pay to balance the books.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I wonder if that's where we are with it.
There's a tipping point, and it can only be that, because them prices are daft, aren't they?
Yeah.
Not to but
I've said to you.
And if we go up, I'll not care.
Yeah, I've said to you, I'll be getting a season ticket by hook or by crook, and I'm probably going to sell one of the twins to do it. And seeing as Molly comes, it'll be Olivia that'll be on eBay this time next week. Yeah. So match days, we've talked a little bit about what it was like as kids. We've talked about sort of going in the early 90s, the mid 90s. We've talked about the Premier League era. Things have changed a little bit life-wise, haven't they? We're a little bit older. What does a match day look like for you now, start to finish, getting up on a Saturday morning, getting yourself down? What's it look like?
So for me, obviously, Sebastian sits with me, as you know. He does a drama club, a sort of acting club on a Saturday morning. So it's now part of the routine that he goes there. Finishes at 1:10. That's up at Meadowhead School. So we basically just shoot down from there and try and get as close to the ground as we can. Sort of buzz you on the way, see where you are, whether you've gone for a bite to eat or whether you're fan zone or whether you're going straight into the ground. Meet you, generally have a chat. Kids get on, play, and then it's down to serious business, isn't it? Of getting into. I'm not one of those that goes in, as you well know, and sits in my seat for an hour before. Very rarely do I get there much before, as into my seat much before the kick-off. I don't know. I don't know whether it's I don't want the nerves. As soon as you sort of enter and sort of going down the steps to your chair, that's when it hits me a little bit, and I do get a little bit. I always get nervous, if I'm honest. I don't know. It's a powerful thing, isn't it? I think walking into even now after so many years and doing it so many times, I still do get nervous, and I still do get a buzz and excitement. It really is a feeling that you can't really not put into words, but there's nothing else that affects me like that, really. Sebastian's kind of getting there with it. He enjoys coming. He's really enjoyed. He absolutely loved being at Wembley. He loved it. He's got more and more into it. He's got more and more into watching clips on Twitter that I've been showing him and watching different goals and stuff. Last season, it was a bit of a struggle with him. He enjoyed it for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then it was kind of my iPad, that sort of stuff. But he's far more hooked on it now. So it's more enjoyable for me to see him enjoying it more now as well. And obviously Molly, she's just me when I was her age, isn't she? She just really is. So I absolutely, I love how passionate she is about it. I love that she writes things in a little Wednesday book and all that sort of stuff. She's just me.
Yeah. I mean, again, this isn't my Wednesday, it's your Wednesday, but I couldn't not say something about, the match days that I get to spend with my daughter. People might not be aware that we're both teachers. We've got fairly high pressure jobs that we do. And I know you, like me, work very hard sort of Monday to Friday. And when that school bell goes on a Friday afternoon, my first thought is turning to Saturday and how I'm going to spend my day with my daughter and my family and my mate. So it means,
isn't it? That's been the thing. Like, obviously, you've touched on your mate there, and like, obviously, his little boy, his dad, his nephew, and just sort of seeing those two kids as well develop a real love for the club, because they absolutely love it, don't they?
Yeah.
You just sat listening to probably the generation before you, behind, having a little whinge every now and again.
Just in case they're listening, honestly. they might
They do have a little whinge every now and again, don't they? And
yeah.
They're
minute 1, minute 4, minute 6, minute 8.
but and obviously they've got one of them's got their almost grown up child. You're seeing the next generation falling in love with the club that you will love, just like you did. And there'll be loads of those stories as you go around the sort of three sides of the home fans, and it's just it's a beautiful thing. It really is.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Okay, last couple. We couldn't not mention, and I get away with it. We are, as I've said, we're time stamping them just to make sure that people know when we've recorded. I'm not going to fall foul of anything unless Dan and Ash decide not to put this out till September. But even so, we're a couple of weeks out of, for me, probably the best two games of my sort of memory, going all the way back to sort of 91. I think the night at Peterborough was absolutely phenomenal, and then we get to 120 plus 3 at Wembley. For you, your experience of sort of the depths of 4-0 down going on, winning 5-1 in Wembley. Talk me through that a little bit.
Obviously, you went to the game and I didn't. So I was flitting between WhatsApp as I'm watching it on TV. Put my old Wednesday shirt on, sat watching it. Flitting
This
between.
Is the game, by the way.
This is game one. This is game one. So I'm flitting between WhatsApping you, who's there, and flitting between WhatsApping a couple of workmates. We're in a little 3-way WhatsApp group called the Owls, very original of us, I know. And one of them wasn't watching the game. He was on this works function, and he's texting every 2 minutes going, "What's going on? What is happening here?" And I'm saying, "Well, we're not actually playing that bad. We just had a chance. We've just had a chance." And then his first goal goes in, second goal, and I think, to be honest, I'm texting you, and my messages got more and more abusive to the point where I think you just stopped playing, didn't you? You were just like mute. Yeah, because you were probably getting as wound up as I was. My head had gone, and we'd said in our group, when it got to 2-0, we'd said in our group, if they score another, that's game over. You can forget the second leg. Anyway, they scored another 2. So I was walking around the next day. I think I continued to WhatsApp you. I think you did end up replying by the end. I think you just replying just to shut me up by the end of the day.
I could feel the rage.
I was just walking around going 4-0 and shaking my head for 24 hours. I couldn't put into words what had happened and what I'd seen. All I could just keep saying was just complete anomaly. And it felt like it just felt like a complete anomaly. So obviously we rocked up to the second leg. We obviously travelled together, didn't we? And I knew we were onto something. I knew I was onto something when I'd guessed the programme cover. When Molly had said, who do you think is going to be on the cover? And I'd said, I think it's going to be like a group team photo hugging in a huddle. And then it was. I was like, oh, maybe there is something in the air tonight. Then obviously we went into the fan zone, bumped into Andy, didn't we, and having a chat. And he said, we didn't even really talk about the match, did we? Because for me, it was almost this is a goodbye game, end of season game, another second end of season game. And it actually felt like that for me. You know, call me pessimistic if you like, but I'm a bit of a realist. Little did I know. But for that reason, I talked about feeling nervous earlier. I probably felt less nervous for that game than I did any other game of the season. When I remember feeling a bit relieved that I don't feel. I remember obviously the Sunderland game last year, I was mega nervous. And you know, towards the end of the game, I just felt so deflated. And obviously, with everybody, I think every Wednesday night in any part of the Sheffield or the country even had said, if we go in 2-0, we stand a chance. And it just kind of just went to absolute script until obviously the own goal went in. And then it was a little bit like, oh, all that. And that's just happened. Oh, and again, the deflation. But I actually sat there and people, as the sort of game went on before Palmer equalised, the game's going on around me and it's getting closer and closer to final whistle. And people were leaving and I'm thinking, well, obviously I'm not going to leave, but we've done ourselves justice tonight. We've after the embarrassment, which is what a lot of fans probably felt of the first leg, I don't feel that now. I feel pride actually now. And then obviously when Palmer scored, everybody just went wild, didn't they? And I'll be honest, I had no idea who had scored. I think I looked down at Dave's nephew. He was crying his eyes out, and I thought somebody had hurt him and jumped on him. Like, you all right? It was just absolute bedlam, wasn't it? What we were seeing before our eyes, I don't think any person could really believe what they were seeing. It was a bit like, felt a little bit like payback for all the hard years, really. Honestly, it did. It felt like, and obviously it was more than 90 minutes, weren't it? More than 120 minutes with penalties, but it felt like a little bit of a, there you go, you deserve that, fans, after everything that you've sort of, you know, gone through and suffered, and the disappointment of, you know, the year before, not going back up, the and everything else that's been disappointing over the last 20 odd plus years. So yeah, just incredible. You know, we'll never see anything like that again, I don't think, ever. Yeah.
And then Wembley.
Well, yeah, just again, absolutely incredible. I think I've been to the physio and I was talking to him, and he's more of a rugby, but he knows obviously I'm a Wednesday fan, and we were talking about Wembley, and I sort of was trying to describe the scenes when we scored, and I said to him, it was sort of overwhelming emotion and elation, because I think every single Wednesday fan in the ground knew that is time. That is there's no two ways about it. It's not even just get the ball and put it in the corner. There's 0 time left. So I think it was just one huge celebration, wasn't it? It was emotional, if I'm honest. I felt really, really emotional. I think Molly, for probably the 3rd time this season, have gone, and Steph, are you crying again? And Steph, are you crying again? And I did. I just absolutely, yeah, I can't put it into words. I just absolutely just, yeah, it just felt like a massive sense of relief just left you. Absolutely unbelievable.
Brilliant. Okay. Last question. What are your thoughts on next season?
Tough league, really. On paper, when you're looking at the sort of clubs, it's no Mickey Mouse league, that one, is it now? I think I read something the other day where somebody had said, I don't know if it was something like Ainsworth or somebody had done an interview and said there are no small teams in that league anymore. They're all pretty much. There's not going to be any easy games, any gimmies or anything like that, is there? I don't think. The one thing that I will say is, obviously, we've not yet started. We can't really, can we, start the recruitment? The recruitment is going to be just completely critical, isn't it? It's all going to boil down to his recruitment, and I think, if I'm being honest, his recruitment over the past couple of years has been very, very good. But he's going to be recruiting at a different level now, isn't he? He's going to be pitching it at the next level up with a view to, and then who can step up again if the best case scenario does happen. But he's no mug, Darren Moore. He's had his critics. I think it's fair to say that he's proven himself the last couple of years. That's my view.
Give me a league position. What would you be happy with?
For the first season, playoffs.
If we're not sick by February, more out.
No, I'd be happy with promotion, of course, but in terms of realistic, that's a tough question when you don't know who's brought in. But if I'm going on the trend of recruiting well, mid-table or above, I think we've got to be sniffing around the sort of. I'd want to be in with a shout of playoffs, sort of as you're going into the last quarter of the season. I think I'd be satisfied with that. To then go and build on. I hope that don't make me sound really as I'm lacking ambition.
I don't think so.
There's been a bit of talk of we want to do what Sunderland have done, and I mean, wouldn't that be nice? But I think we'll know more when we see who we recruits. And there's going to be some changes, isn't there? Bannon's a mainstay. We're not going to be. He's not going to be. How many years has he got left in him? So there's going to be a key player that's going to need replacing in the coming years. Hopefully not too soon, because it's class, isn't it? But there's going to be some changes, isn't there?
Yeah. Okay. Steph, we've survived. We've got through. We've done a good 43 minutes there.
Good.
And it's the first time we've actually sat down and had a conversation with each other about football in this sort of situation, isn't it? Where we've just sat and shot the breeze, sort of thing. Yeah. Thank you very much. Really appreciate you taking the time out your day to sit and talk to your big brother. And you haven't shown me up too much.
No.
If you are listening to this and you're watching it on YouTube, we're always happy to get people interacting with us. Comments, likes, retweets are all appreciated. If you want to get involved with the My Wednesday sort of podcast, drop us a line, slide into the DMs, and we'll set something up over the summer. We're going to continue to do these over the summer months, so hopefully we'll get more content out there for everybody, just so that they can get their steady Wednesday week fix. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you soon.